We'll get stuck into things. Welcome everyone to Cashflow Assistance, managing cash flow in a downturn. I'll start off with a couple of housekeeping things. So we're going to quickly move through a couple of concepts today. So as we're going, feel free to put some questions in the chat box. We'll make sure we get to them now or at the end. Okay, the agenda for today's session. We'll go through a little bit of an introduction. We're going to go through the thought of today's session, so who we are and what we really want you guys to take away from today. We're going to work through the 7 causes of poor cash flow and hopefully help you guys address the symptom, not just the symptoms, but the underlying causes that are impacting cash flow. Work through necessity versus luxury, then the next steps, and take some questions at the end. So, bit of an intro. Our presenters for today, myself, Stuart, Kendall, joined by Stephanie Green here, our senior advisor.
Hi, guys.
Fantastic, and let's get underway. So, thought of today's session, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash is king. So I think that's something that many people will have heard before. It doesn't matter what those turnover numbers are, if margins aren't there and the cash isn't coming in the door, business isn't going to be going as well as we can. So today we want to really focus on drilling down into that cash side of things and doing the little things that we can improve on to make sure that as much cash is coming through as quickly as possible. Okay, so.
All right, guys. So today we're going to cover off, this is our main points, the 7 key causes of poor cash flow. So we've got a bit of a summary here for you. Then we'll drill down into each of these a bit further as we go. So first off, we've got accounts receivable process. So are your debtors actually paying you? The high debtor days means that they're benefiting from the cash rather than you, which is not what we want. Accounts payable process. Have you got a mismatch between how fast your debtors are paying and how fast you need to pay your creditors? Your inventory process. Are you carrying stock for too long, meaning that you've got full shelves and an empty bank balance? And overheads. Every business, should do a review of their overheads at least once a year. Also, we're going to talk about your gross profit margins. Are they too low? Are your variable costs too high, and is that causing cash flow issues? We'll have a look at sales levels and if they're too low, and also have a look at inappropriate debt/capital structures. So kicking it off, first of all, we've got the accounts receivable process. So basically, we need to look at some ways that you can get paid faster by your customers. Now, the absolute main point here I want to make sure is that everyone has a debtors policy. This is something that we look at quite regularly in our business, and it's really important to make sure you're reviewing it in yours and that you've actually got something written down that you follow. You really need to stick to this. So as much as we want to be sympathetic, obviously in these times when people are struggling to pay their bills and things like that, as much as we want to be kind, we also need to be kind to our business. If we aren't chasing that money, our business is going to struggle, and that's not what we want to see. So there's some things that we can think about in the accounts receivable process to really help that money start flowing back in, which is really the number one process to get some funds in. Have you thought about direct debit arrangements? So putting in place ways to collect that money automatically so you're not actually having to go out there and chase it down. Have you thought about discounts for prompt payment? So if you get your money in by the deadline, can you give a discount? And using products like Xero, which now have credit limits applied. So if you've got customers that are going outside of their credit terms, Xero can automatically stop invoices going out. So it will automatically pick up those issues and help work with you to get them resolved. Next up, we've got the accounts payable process. So big one here is if we're paying if our debtors are paying us on 30-day terms and we need to pay our suppliers on 7-day terms, we're going to have a massive mismatch of cash, which is obviously going to be a huge cash flow issue. So there are a few things we can look at here to make sure we reduce that issue. Things like making sure we're not incurring late payment fees. So if we're paying outside credit terms with our suppliers, are they charging us fees, which is also impacting cash flow? Just paying those few days early could be saving you money. We can have a look at negotiating better payment terms with suppliers. Can we push that 7 days out to 14 or even 21 days? Or do they have discounts for early payments that we could be looking into? And also making sure we've got budgets in place. So having a look to make sure we're spending where we need to be spending and we're not wasting that cash on something that's not a necessity, which we will have a look at a bit later on. Stu, I'll pass over to you for the inventory process.
Okay, guys, on the inventory front, we want to look at some ways that we can shorten our cash conversion cycle by getting stock moving faster. So let's say I'm a clothing retailer and I've got 12 pairs of bell bottoms that have been on the sales rack since 2009. It's what we refer to as high inventory days. So what's happened then is we've taken cash out of our working capital cycle to purchase that stock. And it's not until we sell that stock that that cash comes back into the cycle for us to use in the day-to-day going into the business. So what are different ways that we can shrink that process and make sure that cash comes back in faster? Or say in hospitality, if you're purchasing perishable goods that aren't being used in time, so say you're purchasing every fortnight instead of every week, and you're suffering from wastage, that's cash disappearing through inventory cycle that isn't coming back into the business. So what are some of the ways we can fix that? Well, we can review our stock ordering systems, make sure we're only ordering stock when we need it, and when there's a possibility that's going to get turned into a sale. We can use technology to better manage our stock recording and identify those slow-moving pieces of inventory early. Then create a slow-moving stock policy to make sure that they get discounted and get them out the door quicker. We can look at shrinkage controls to make sure that we're not suffering from that wastage. And then all in all, making sure that we've got a really clear stock control process and a regular stock take to make sure that if things are going missing, we're picking it up before it becomes a problem. So I suppose they're the key ways that we can really shrink that process. So our next cause, overheads too high. So as Steph mentioned earlier, it's really, really key that everyone looks at their overheads at least annually. So a lot of the time, it's not necessarily an increase in cost, but it's a lack of oversight that allow these to sneak up on people. So you might not have a departmental budget that you or your team follow, so that those costs just keep slowly increasing until there's a big problem. You might not be forecasting when those big repeating payments come in and making sure there's enough cash there to pay that at the time, and it becomes a problem. You're not negotiating contracts that come in, so just rolling over phone bills and internet providers, light and power, that sort of thing. You're not checking for return on investment for things that say advertising. So if you're putting an ad in the paper every single week, how do you know that that ad's actually generating the leads it needs to? And then that no year-on-year review, lining up last year to this year when you finish your financials and having a really detailed look through to make sure that every item is roughly where it should be. So really, you can't manage what you don't measure, and taking that or booking that time to regularly review those overheads is a real key to making sure it's not eating into that cash flow.
Now on the gross profit margin front. So the gross profit margin, I'm sure you all know that that's what's left over from your sales once you've taken off your variable costs like materials and labor. So if we increase our gross profit margin, basically, if you have a look at the image we've got here, you're going to end up with a bigger slice of the cake at the end of the day. So if we have a look at some ways that we can increase this margin, as Stu mentioned before, we're looking at things like wastage. Have we got a lot of wastage that's bringing up our cost of sales but not generating any income on the other end? Are we finding a lot of work needs to be redone, or there's errors or things like that, which is also costing time and money but not getting any income? Do we have some efficiencies that can be gained in the production process? Are there some extra steps that we're doing that aren't necessary that we can trim down our process and make it a bit more efficient and cheaper to run? Are we picking up all of our billable time? So if we're doing the work, are we making sure that we're actually billing for it and we're not giving away that value for nothing? And also, are there any cheaper or comparable materials out there that we could look to switch to? So,
okay, the number 6 is our sales levels being too low. So it's obviously an easy fix and to get more people through the door. But how do we go out and do that? So The easiest customers you'll get are existing customers. So how do we get more customers to come back to us regularly? So increasing that retention rate through client experience and making sure that our customers love us as much as we love them coming to us. It's generating more leads, so getting yourself out there in the market and promoting your business, and not just any old lead, but qualified leads that they're going to turn into sales through increasing our conversion rates. We want to increase transaction frequency, so make sure that people are coming back to us more often to spend more money more times during the year. So rather than once a year or twice a year, they might come 3 or 4. And then last of all, increasing transaction value, getting them to spend more money while they're with you each time. We don't have time to fully go through all of them, but out of all those ways, there's plenty of movement there that you can definitely try and pick up an additional sale or two. Now, last cause, I suppose, is an inappropriate level of equity to debt. So this one's, I suppose, after the other symptoms are dealt with, this is the one that's sort of left over. So for me, it's operating a business is always about generating cash or borrowing from someone else. So, or keeping the doors open is generating cash or finding a bank or someone to support you. It's looking at what those interest rates are, making sure we're getting a good deal on loans when we have to. It's about the right term, right loan for the right reason, making sure owners' drawings aren't a massive burden on the working capital of the business. And then for all those fails, potentially outside investment or additional loan facilities from the government. Now, at this time, there's things that during the downturn we can look at, like the government-supported loans. There's JobKeeper, there's business support fund, those sort of things. They aren't long-term fixes, but they will certainly help you get through the time, the tough times we're going through right now.
Okay, now as we touched on briefly earlier, we want to have a bit of a discussion around necessity versus luxury. So what does your business need rather than what do you want? So obviously at the moment with the pressure business owners are under, it'd be easy to justify treating yourself to that extra cup of takeaway coffee or getting those new runners that you've been eyeing off as a bit of a pick-me-up to try and get you through lockdown. But when it comes to cash flow, if we're having troubles, we really need to focus on the necessities first. So do I really need those new runners if I only bought a pair 6 months ago? Can I just stick with instant coffee today rather than going out and getting a 3rd cup of takeaway, even though it might be essential to keep yourself awake? So when we have a look at the business's necessities, we're talking about the fixed costs, the ones that really need to be paid to keep your business operating. So we obviously need the electricity going, but things like your Herald Sun subscription, could we maybe put that on hold if we are having issues with the cash flow? Is there a way that we can work through your profit and loss and look at exactly what you're paying that needs to be paid to keep going, and those things that we might want to be paid but aren't necessary right now when we are facing cash flow difficulties? So we need to make sure we're looking at those costs and changing those behaviours to make sure we're keeping that extra cash available to pay the things that are really essential rather than just what would be nice. Okay, so the next steps to take after today, what we really want you guys to do is to have a look and identify the 3 most important actions that you need to take. So having a look at all of these items, is there any changes that you can make to your cash flow? Will you do nothing? So just have a look at today, think that was fantastic, go back to business as usual. Will you retreat? So have a look, think, geez, that's a bit scary. I'm just going to ignore it. There's no problem. I don't have any issues at all. Are you going to take a normal amount of action? So think, yeah, there's 1 or 2 little things that I could change. I might not get that coffee today, but the rest I'll just leave as is. Or will you take massive amounts of action and really change the way you're doing things and reach out for help? So not just do it on your own when we are available to help you guys out. And we know these ways that we can look at making little changes to really improve things in your business and get that cash flowing again. Now, does anyone have any questions for us? We're happy to take any questions at all. There is a chat box that you can pop them into now. So we'll leave things open for a little bit to get some questions popping through.
Now, the questions I've got here are about how do you calculate this sort of thing. If you do want to learn how to calculate things like inventory days and debtor days and the impact they have, please feel free to flick us an email. It's probably a bit tough to explain without a little bit more info. So we can certainly provide that down the track.
Yep. Did everyone want to jump in and put in those 3 items that they're going to take action on? We'll keep you accountable. So if you want to pop something in there, we'll give you a follow-up and make sure that you're actually having a go at making those changes. If not, that's all right. We're always around for a phone call if you want to have a chat, or send us an email and flick through some ideas or issues that you're having, and we'll help you out.
Perfect.
All right, thanks guys for attending. We hope you got some value out of today and have those key takeaways that you can go and implement in your businesses. We are running another webinar on the 26th of August, which is our regular monthly schedule. This one will be an introduction to the 10 hats. So if you've been to our webinars before, you would have heard us talking about the 10 hats and the business structure that we operate under. So we want to give you a bit more information around how that works and how it can really get some efficiencies into your business. If you do have any other topics that you'd like to see presented in the future, please flick them through in an email and we'd be happy to have a look at them. Fantastic. All right, I think that's it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for
See you
attending,
later.
guys.